Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public session of the Committee of the Whole of the Halton District School Board on April 17, 2024. In attendance, we have trustees Bryden, Rocha, Baxter, Amos, Chair Collard, trustee Zhang, Shuttleworth, and Gray. And trustee Daniele will be joining us shortly. I don't see anybody online at the moment. And Director Annis, can you tell us who is in the room with us?
Thank you and good evening, everyone. We have just the appropriate staff responding to the items on the agenda tonight here. Some are online. Thank you.
Welcome, trustee Daniele. Okay, all right. Please be advised that the meeting is being recorded and is being live streamed on the hdsb.ca and on the HDSB YouTube channel. We will begin with the acknowledgement of traditional lands, and that will be trustee Bryden.
We begin by acknowledging the land and our responsibility to care for and respect all that provides us with life. This land upon which HDSB is situated is on the ancestral treaty and tidal lands of the Anishinaabe Ojibwe Michizagi Nation, now known as the Mississaugas of the Credit. Michizagi territory is in the past and present continues to host both Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. The HDSB is committed to continuous knowledge building with respect to actions that address and resolve the ongoing impacts of colonialism. We do this by learning and understanding the true history, treaty obligations, duties and responsibilities, and Indigenous rights while actively maintaining mutually beneficial relationships and collectively respecting and caring for the land.
Thank you. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Trustee Rocha, would you like to move a motion to approve the agenda?
Yes.
Are there any objections to approving of the agenda? Hang on. Okay, we've got two speakers. And we'll go to, we'll use our first names. Carol?
Thank you. I just had a quick question. I'm wondering if you could explain the deletion of trustee comments and questions from the agenda. I had asked, but I didn't quite understand the explanation, so I thought I would just ask this evening. Thank you.
Okay, if you recall, at the March Committee of the Whole meeting, we discussed a recommendation that was brought forward by Marian Thompson Howell in our earlier PD session on governance, where she recommended that, suggested that actually may not be an appropriate item to have on an agenda, and suggested that we remove it. Because we did have it on the agenda at the March meeting, we continued, but we had set out some parameters around what would be discussed. And we did mention that we will remove it in the future until we have our subsequent governance training with the same consultant, and then we can have further discussion on how to proceed.
Sorry, I just don't recall it. I remember the conversation because I remember contributing to it and agreeing with her. But as far as I remember, I should go back to my notes. I thought we had discussed after our next session, we could look at what we would replace it with. I think some of us, myself included, talked about the accountability piece that we each have and using it for that purpose. And so I guess what I didn't understand from that committee of the whole meeting is that we had made a decision to remove it. I thought we had just sort of discussed the ins and outs of why we had it. And then we have booked our follow-up. So I didn't realize we had made a decision. I think I missed that.
We did acknowledge that we wanted to discuss it a bit more. And I think we just agreed that we will leave it off until we have better understanding and some more guidance around what would be appropriate, and if replaced, what would be the appropriate replacement. Okay, Tanya?
Yeah, through you. So similar to Carol, I do have concerns that it was removed from the agenda only because our governance procedure does stipulate an agenda for committee of the whole, and the agenda does contain in it a section for trustee questions and comments. So if we're going to be removing it from the agenda, then a report should be brought forth so that there could be a vote as to whether or not that is the wish of the trustees to amend that GP. So until that GP is revised, it should be included in the agenda. And for that reason, I would like to amend tonight's agenda to include a section for trustee questions and comments.
And I'll just respond to your initial comment around the governance procedure. The agenda is included in the appendix as a template. And of course, we will be having more discussion after the subsequent governance PD, at which time we can decide what is the appropriate item, what it should be called, and what the parameters would be. So there's more discussion to be had. This is just a temporary.
Okay, so I'm following up. So we're doing a temporary trial of one board meeting per month, and that was a board motion that came to the board, and there was a vote, even if it's just temporary. So if a section is going to be removed from committee of the whole, then that too should require a vote by the board, even if it is for a temporary period of time.
Point of information, which GP are we discussing?
Board committees. As the chair of the meeting, I would defer to Joanna to advise Robbie what the policy, what the GP is. If she can't, then I will.
I believe you're referring to the striking committees.
No.
The appointments to committees and other.
Yes, appointments to committees and other roles, GP.
Yes. Moving on, Kelly.
I just want to say I don't recall the conversation about having it removed either. I mean, and I just wanted to put it out there. I just don't recall that.
Margot.
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. So I'm going to agree with Kelly. I kept going on and off because people were asking the questions they're asking, but I too don't agree. I don't remember saying we were going to take it out. I remember the conversation about it and I remember her talking about it because she commented on how nice it is that we're able to do that because we recognize that we have a board that's able to have that in having those crucial conversations in a productive way. However, what she did caution us against is that we won't always have that kind of board. But I think we're being a little bit preemptive of doing that without having a vote or a discussion around it. Just my 2 cents. Thank you.
And I'll just clarify that discussion was also had at the March Committee of the Whole. Okay, Donna?
I'm terribly sorry. I don't mean to pile on, but I'm going to add my discomfort for this. I was out of the country for the March 23rd. It wasn't on the agenda in any way, shape, or form. I don't think it was in the minutes or the notes. So coming in, this is a complete and total surprise to me. And I think, as Tanya said, if we had a process instead of just some people remember that we were going to take it off, others don't remember that we were going to take it off. I would just suggest going forward that we have a more formalized process for this so that there was no consideration for anybody who did not make the meeting and did not have a chance to participate in the conversation and actually had no idea that decision had been made. So that would be my discomfort with it. And I would also suggest amending the agenda to return it if that's the will of the board until such time as we do have something come forward and that we all know what decision that we're making. I think when you have casual conversations, sometimes people can walk away with different impressions as to whether a decision was made or not. I'm sure it was all innocent and trying to get us moving forward and moving more efficiently and everything else. And I think in the long run that may be a great thing, but perhaps from now we've just got a couple little bumps in the system.
Fair enough. I hear what everybody's saying. Amy.
Okay, I'll suggest that perhaps we add it back to this evening's agenda with the advisory that it should be related to the types of comments and questions that the facilitator told us it ought to be. So those would be announcements of things happening in our schools and those things of that nature. She was very clear that we ought not to be discussing board business during trustee comments and questions, and we should not be discussing things that are happening that are specific issues related to a school. Those ought to be taken offline. Those were the parameters she gave us, that they should be announcements of special things that are happening at our schools.
Tana, follow up?
I think that's the discussion we have when we decide how we go forward. I don't remember specifically. She told us a lot of things that night and we haven't implemented every one of them. So again, I'm a little more process driven. I'd like to see us all decide that that is what we are going to do. Because, you know, you and I have been at this long enough and Kelly's been at this long enough. We've had conflicting PD over the years. So I would want to delve a little more deeply into a lot of what she said. And I apologize because I'm coming at this having missed that meeting on the 23rd by my own decision. And I recognize that I need to own the impact of that. But for me, again, I think before we make any of these kind of changes, we need to collectively as a group decide that that is our vision and that is how we are going forward. That's just my 2 cents. For tonight, I don't disagree with doing that, but I wanted to make it clear that I'm not saying that that is how it should be going forward unless we have all had a discussion and we've all agreed or have consensus that that is how we move forward.
Margot.
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. And again, I'm just going to add my 2 + 2 = 4 to what Donna said. And I think what you're saying, Amy, was sort of the general idea, but we currently have processes that we follow and we enact. And to change that without voting on it, I just don't think is the right way to go. So as Donna said, I think it's something that needs to have a full conversation for us all to decide together whether or not we move in that direction. Thank you.
Kelly?
I just wanted to say I just went back and reviewed the minutes from that meeting, and there's nothing there saying that we were proposing a change or a change was going to happen. So I just wanted, I mean, if that had been there, then okay, my memory just didn't recollect it, but I just don't see anything that said that we were doing it. That's all.
Okay, Robbie.
I was asking about the GP because I went to the GP. The line is the agenda shall be the responsibility of the vice chair. And I started there and went, okay, that may be discretionary. And then it's followed by the agenda will be in the format appended here too. And by that guidance, I think we should be following that format until we change that format formally or we change the 5.1.1.
All right, I hear about everybody's opinion. Thank you. So we have an amendment to add trustee questions and comments to the agenda. And that is moved by Tanya. And we don't have to second. Okay. Let's vote by a show of hands. All in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. Who's online? Oh, Trustee Ahmed has joined the meeting. Welcome. All right, moving on to declarations of possible conflict of interest. In relation to our agenda this evening, are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest? Seeing none, We'll move on to the next items. There are no delegations or presentations, and so now consent agenda. And we have the approval of March 20th Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. As well, we have for receipt of information items, 5 admin procedures. I will put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that the board approve the consent agenda action items and receive the information items as listed on the April 17, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda. Trustee Baxter, would you like to move the motion to deal with the consent agenda?
Yes, please.
Are there any items that need to be pulled for discussion? Okay, Margot?
Yeah, I'd like, and it's just a really quick question, and I realized that there was a question answered before that I just didn't see. It's on the health support services in school, the AP on that one. Is Colette here tonight? Yes, awesome.
Yes, she's online. Anything else? Tanya? No? You're still.
So I have a general question, not so much a pulling of one particular AP, but a general question with respect to APs.
Okay, so let's go to discussion. Margot, over to you with your question.
Thank you. Colette?
Hi there.
I just have it's just kind of a point of clarification because I'm a little bit confused by it. So you have, and it's really hard because do you have it in front of you?
I do,
So
yeah.
on the top of page 3, in the chart, it talks about medication, oral, nasal, rectal. And then it has student as authorized, parent, guardian, caregiver as authorized, educational assistant or other personnel. So, and then provided by same people. Is there something telling us why the different, like when it's the student that does it themselves, or when it's the parent that does it, or when it's the EA that does it? Like they're all there, but I don't really, that means anybody can give it to them. So I'm just wondering, is there something that clarifies when Robbie has to take medication, Robbie gives it to himself. When Jean has to take medication, the parent has to. So I'm just wondering if there's a clarity on that piece. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Margot. Really, it comes down to the student-specific need and the profile of that student. That information would come through the form that the parent or the student, if they're above the age of 18, would complete themselves for the administration of medication. And the specific directives around how or who administers the medication would also be reflected in the student's plan of care if they have a prevalent medical condition. So it's not reflected in this AP because it's very student specific, but the cross-reference ties it into the other APs where it does lie.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, your question?
I do. I guess this is more of a question for Director Ennis. So we have our policy and procedure framework that stipulates that whenever a policy or GP or AP are written, that they're supposed to reference the partner policy or APGP. And so more often than not, APs come to the board now for information and they don't reference the policy or a policy. So I'm wondering, whose responsibility is it to ensure that all APs reference a policy?
That would be mine. That would be my responsibility. And certainly, we've been encouraged, and I've encouraged the team to make sure we're making that nexus to the policy from the procedures. But as you know, not all procedures have policies that can be neatly tied to. So that's sometimes a challenge.
Okay, if I can I'd like to follow up. So if what you're saying is that not AP has a policy that neatly ties to it, could then perhaps the policy be amended to reflect what you just said, that not all APs may neatly tie into a policy?
Certainly, we could take that as a suggestion moving forward.
Okay, and that would be, I'm looking for the governance committee, because the policies are something that trustees look after. So, Trustee Chair Oliver, can I make a motion to have the governance document review committee look at the policy and procedure framework to amend it to reflect Director Ennis's thoughts this evening?
This is committee of the whole. Does that not fall better under a board meeting and a formal motion?
Yes, you're right. So then what I'd like to do is perhaps the chair of the governance document review committee can maybe put it on their to-do list.
Carolina has a comment.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just by way of background, I am assisting the GDR committee with respect to updating the policy template, the report template, and then that will lead into work with respect to governance procedures as well as administrative procedures. So this conversation is really helpful because we're in the middle of those discussions. And so if that is the will of the trustees, that there is a deliberate and requisite link to make, then that can be something that can be incorporated into the policy template so that it's not missed in future. And then similarly, that can be something that can be built into the procedure template.
Okay. Amy?
Thank you. So I would suggest that there's more than one way to tackle this issue. There is also creating a policy. We need to look at each case individually and determine whether or not there ought to be a policy before we just let it go that there isn't a policy there. Perhaps there should be a policy there, and I think that's something that the Governance Document Review Committee ought to be looking at before determining that we will just say it's okay not to have a policy. So let's take that back to the standing committee and let them have the conversation on this. This is not the right place for us to be making this decision this evening anyway. Let's let Trustee Bryden discuss it with the committee.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to approval of the consent agenda. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved by unanimous consent. Moving on to discussion items, and we've got a couple here. Item 4.1 is a follow-up regarding our 3-month trial meeting schedule and proposed schedule for 24-25, and that will be presented to us by Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna, through you. So in the agenda package, you'll see the report that speaks to a follow-up to the 3-month trial with respect to altering the frequency of board and committee of the whole meetings as well as the start times, and then suggest further next steps as a result of that. So the report lists 4 recommendations, one being to permanently adopt one board, one committee of the whole frequency per month. The next recommendation is to set 6 p.m. as the start time for both of those meetings. The third recommendation is to further amend our current meeting schedule to reflect the one board meeting a month to align with the 3-month trial. And then the last recommendation presents options with respect to how next year's schedule would look like. And so you are presented with 2 options, one being for Wednesday nights as Appendix A, and then Tuesday nights in Appendix B. So Again, this being committee of the whole, this is largely for discussion. I'm looking for your feedback and your thoughts. I will be bringing back sort of a more formalized report to board on May 1st that incorporates these suggestions and then further from the discussion from tonight. I do just want to make quick reference to a couple of comments that I received with respect to next year's proposed dates. And on both of those schedules, I will admit that I inadvertently omitted the organizational meeting date, so I do apologize for that, but that was a great catch and that will be added, absolutely. And then under Appendix B for the Tuesday schedule, September 3rd is listed as the first board meeting, but that is in fact a PA day, so my suggestion would be just to have that one particular one on the Wednesday, and then we can go on a Tuesday rotation following that. So with that, I'll leave it at that. You have the report in front of you.
Okay, so maybe to structure this discussion, let's split it into, I guess, 3 topics. First, let's deal with, let's get your perspectives on the success of and the possibility of continuing with one board meeting and one committee of the whole meeting per month. Let's have that discussion first. So, Margot?
Thanks, Joanna. So first of all, I'd like to say I love found time. So I love having that extra time. However, I am conscious that with that once a month meeting for staff, if they don't get the report in that month, they have to wait a whole other month. And I just worry that we are going to start to miss things. I really struggle. I love the fact that I don't have to come all the time, but I still struggle with and really have a hard time understanding how we have gone from 2 board meetings and a committee of the whole meeting every month, so 3 meetings a month, where often we struggled to complete in the time. Mm-hmm. And now we're down to 1 committee of the whole and 1 board meeting, and I know we have the option of creating a special meeting, but as of yet, no one's done it. And I just really worry that we're going to miss things. And that I think for staff that they are then put under the gun. So if they have to get a report in and they want it in for January, they've got to get it done for the first meeting of January. And if not, they've got to wait till February. So I don't know how that impacts staff. I'd love to hear from staff to let us know what they think about the 1 meeting a month, because again, we're talking at it from this, but they're the ones who do all the background work. They're the ones who compile everything. And if it's putting them at a disadvantage, I think it's really important to get their voices as well.
I will ask Carolina to respond to staff perspective, and I'm just going to build on that question. This pilot was conducted in, let's call it semester 2. Would there have been a difference in semester 1 in terms of managing the reports that came through in a 1 meeting per month timeline?
So I'll start with the first question and then I'll come back. So with respect to the staff perspective, that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking that. That is actually a question that we have taken to the senior team a couple of times, actually. The senior team is quite supportive of the recommendation. I will candidly say that I have not heard any reservations about the 1 board and 1 committee of the whole. We have talked about this, and they do not feel that this will restrict them in terms of moving their items forward. So certainly we have the support from that perspective. And then the other piece of this is we have a report tracker, which allows staff to be a little bit more forward thinking and planning in terms of when they're bringing things forward. So part of this will go in tandem with trying to be definitely deliberate in how we're planning our year so that we are not thinking of an essential report that needs to come forward 2 weeks before it needs to come forward. Hopefully we're doing that months in advance. Not always perfect. That won't always happen, but that's part of our planning and trying to be a little bit more deliberate in forecasting what's coming forward. So I hope that helps, but I have not heard any reservations in that regard that it won't meet their needs. Can I move on to the second? Can I just clarify the question in terms of what you mean?
Yeah, so when we look at our report schedule for the year, obviously the reports are very different from month to month, and they may pertain to issues that maybe are a little longer in term or, have a variety of complexities to them. So I'm wondering if there is a difference. And also those reports come pretty much, year to year, month to month in the same schedule cycle. So we've experienced the reports for this semester too. And I'm wondering if in semester one, there are any that may pose an issue, or any work that happens in the fall that might necessitate more meetings in a month.
Thank you for that question. No, I candidly, no, I don't believe that it would be much different. And in getting off to the first semester, there would be some pre-work and planning what that looks like so that compression is not there. And I will further go on that. The proposed schedule was presented to the senior team so that they would have details as to what that particularly would look like. And there weren't any reservations provided with respect to being able to move things forward in the first or second semester.
Thank you, Carolina. So having heard what Carolina shared from the staff perspective.
There was a second part to my question. Sorry, Joanna.
Okay.
So missing things. Like I just, again, so there's the piece to the staff, but then also my other question was, I worry we're going to miss stuff. I can't help but think.
Margot, are you thinking of if issues come up that were unanticipated, how they would be addressed?
Issues, and then I just think about, I don't even know how to explain it. I just think that there might not be as much time. So I look at one of the meetings we've had recently, and we were discussing it, and there was a time when we wanted to stop the conversation because it was taking too long. So if that's going to happen, and we're not going to be able to have those fulsome discussions around issues that need that full discussion, I worry that time piece again. So I really like only having 2. Again, as a person, as found time, that is a wonderful thing for me in my busy life. However, I'm also cognizant of my duty to make sure that I am looking at everything carefully, closely, and it is having the rigorous conversation around it to make sure we're not missing something. So that's just, and it could be unfounded, I don't know, but it's just sitting right back there. Thank you.
So you raise a good point about those discussions that might need to go on a little bit longer, and there is the opportunity to expand the time given to those discussions. But I also know Carolina wants to speak from staff perspective too.
Thank you for raising that, Margot. I think there are a couple pieces to that. One is, from my experience, when you're building a regular meeting schedule, you build it based on the average volume of items that you deal with, not according to the exception to the rule. So typically, our meetings are our meeting time is sufficient to deal with the regular items that come through in front of you. However, there will always be exceptions to that rule. there are items that come up. Where that happens, there are mechanisms to deal with that. You could defer to have more wholesome discussions at a special meeting. You could lengthen the time of the meeting. You could bring it back. There are different mechanisms to deal with that exception to the rule. I would just, I guess I would warrant against building a regular meeting schedule based on an exception rather than the normal course. And then the other piece is the board is doing great work in terms of PD and training and to think about ways in which your meetings can become increasingly efficient and effective. So I think that over time, maybe some items that take longer in a meeting or take time away from the meeting, maybe those things will work through or maybe not be there anymore, be on an agenda anymore, which will create space for some of those lengthier discussions when they need to happen.
Yeah, thank you. Again, it's just right here. There's just right, because it's new, right? Change is hard. So thank you.
All right, continuing on the discussion of one meeting, one board meeting per month, one committee of the whole. Tanya.
Yes, thank you, through you. Yay, I'm all for found time and reduced meetings. The only two concerns I want to bring to everyone's attention is, if you recall, last year we changed our bylaws so that some reports came fewer times to the board, so we saw some efficiency there. But there are still 11 different types of reports that require 2 presentations. So in today's world, not during this trial period, but let's say in January, we could have dealt with an issue in 1 month, one committee of the whole, and then at the second board meeting, and we're done. But now, if we don't reduce the number of reports that have to come to us twice, the time to make a decision is going to take longer. So, I'm all for less meetings, but with that in mind, I would like us to reduce the number of reports that have to come to the board twice so that if we are looking to be more efficient, then let's be more efficient. And the third thing I wanted to say is, because stuff does come up and things need to be dealt with, that just stuff happens. So instead of waiting for the next month to deal with the issues, if we are going to go with only one board meeting a month, I would like to maybe suggest that we hold that third or fourth Wednesday or Tuesday, whatever day we decide, just as a placeholder, so that if we have to call a special meeting to deal with issues that are coming up because we are going on a reduced schedule, that at least we have a placeholder and that all trustees are available to attend the meeting, instead of saying, are we going to have quorum for a special meeting to deal with stuff that's come up? So those would be my 2 recommendations.
Thank you for those suggestions, and I think that placeholder is something that we had anticipated that would be instituted. Okay, Jean.
Thank you very much. When this report first came before us, I was very much against the whole notion that we would reduce. We have too much business in this board. How could we possibly cover everything in the reduced time? Somehow we were able to make it, and I'm looking at all the benefits that were listed in this report, and thank you for the report. It's excellent. And I totally can concur with the benefits and really appreciate staff's time and how this might impact and reduce some of the load on their time. However, we've only gone through a 3-month trial, and I would propose that we continue the trial, because I think to say after 3 months we're prepared to dive all in for a whole year on this basis might be a bit lofty. And so that would be my thought, that perhaps we should continue the trial, maybe even up to Christmas, to see how we make out, and then adjust the schedule of meetings if we need to. Just my thoughts anyway, just being on the cautious side.
Sounds good. And certainly something that makes sense also to test out the fall period and see what that looks like. Okay, over to Shani.
Okay, thank you. So I have a lot of common thinking like Tanya. Tanya already had a motion before we passed it to reduce the discussion time, present only the report once, and then we go to vote. And I have an idea. So this idea, we need to reduce the reports by combining some APs. So those studies is in progress. And in my idea, I really support Jean's idea. So we need to still continue our trial, because in this recommendation, we already noticed that in June this will be a very busy week, very busy month. So we have so many long reports we need to read, and we need time to read those reports and to fully understand the reports. And so this is not only June. Actually, at the every start at every school year, like the September and November, because we have like inaugural, and December. This is we have strike committee meetings. So those meetings will take a lot of time, and we don't have enough time to discuss the business. So if we want to reduce the meeting, I would say we need to only reduce, like we have 10 months. We don't have a board meetings in summer. So we have 10 months, we have board meetings. We only reduce 5 months to 1. So but in my idea, the placeholder is not a good idea. The reason is, if we have the placeholder and we want to call a special meeting, and special meeting also has a rule. So somebody wants to have a special meeting, somebody don't want, and then we have another vote there's another burden to have a special meeting. And if most people have already scheduled some travel outside meetings, and then we don't have a quorum to have those meetings, that's why I will say continue the trial will be a good option. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is people generally like having the one board meeting and one committee of the whole a month. There is interest in extending the pilot until the end of the calendar year to fully go through the full year and see what that's like. And placeholders have been suggested for dates when we could call a special meeting. However, there's also a recommendation that it might be better to actually book a second meeting. And we do know that around the time of the budget, in June in particular, 2 meetings a month are valuable to have. Do we anticipate that there may be another month where 2 meetings would be necessary?
Okay. So there would be the addition of the organizational meeting in November. And from staff's perspective, June would really be the only month where that would be of benefit. All the other months, they're content with it being the one.
Okay. Tanya?
If I could make a suggestion, we could always plan for 2 board meetings a month. And if that second board meeting isn't necessary, we cancel it. Because it's a lot easier to cancel a meeting than it is to book a special meeting. So we could still announce that there's a board meeting, but if there's nothing that's going to be on the agenda, it gets canceled.
If I could just follow up to that, and certainly from a scheduling perspective, yes, that may be the case, but the part of the impetus for recommending this change is that to try to avoid where there are meetings with not a lot of items on there. So if you create the possibility of that second board meeting, there may be a couple of items, but they are not time-sensitive items, and they could definitely be moved to the subsequent board meeting. And so part of that is creating the efficiency, lessening the resourcing needed to facilitate meetings and all of that. So I don't ever really foresee there being a time where there's a meeting formally on the schedule and there would be no items for that agenda. So if you have 10 board items in a month, you may have 6 on the one agenda, 4 on the other. Maybe none of those are particularly time sensitive. They could go on the one agenda, but because there's the option of 2, they would get spread over the 2. So that's the piece around not having that second meeting formally on the schedule.
Curtis, did you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you. Happy to serve in whatever capacity the trustees deem appropriate. But I mean, even during the trial period, we've had a couple of meetings where the agendas were just not substantive, and even with the one meeting, we could have doubled up on some of those meetings because they were just not substantive at all. But we had the meeting because they were scheduled. So I don't see the desire or it's not been driven by a demand. And to Carolina's point, if we had more meetings set up, we would simply just spread it out and have a lot of inefficient meetings.
Amy.
Yeah, I also fear that by having 2 meetings a month actually scheduled, we are leading the public to believe that those meetings will happen, and they may be choosing to want to delegate, and they may be applying to delegate, and then we cancel the meeting, and that would be a disservice to the public. So that's my caution on scheduling, knowing that we are likely to not need 2 a month. I understand that then we will need 2 in the month of June, and in conversation with Manager Khan, we've come to the conclusion that should be a special board meeting, and the reason for that is that if it's a special meeting, it's a truncated meeting. The only items on the agenda are the items that are fixed to the agenda, that are in the announcement for the meeting, and there are none of the consent agenda items or anything like that in there, and it lets us get to the important business of the meeting, which will be things like the spec ed plan, the budget, those really meaty topics. And I agree with her on that front. So I am worried that if we have 2 meetings a month scheduled, people will be expecting that they can delegate at those meetings, and then we will be canceling meetings, and that will probably not be pleasing to the community.
Okay, thank you. So any final comments on this topic? Kelly?
So is this the whole topic? Because I have a couple things.
Just the one, this is about the 1 meeting per month.
I just want to say that this is not a new idea. It's happened before, and it works. We seem to create the amount of work that fills the void. How's that? That's not really the right way to say it, but we have had in the past 1 meeting a month. We never used to have committee of the whole meetings at one point. We just had a board meeting. So then we created the committee of the whole meetings because we needed to be able to have a place to do other work. So, and the amount of work that we do now is much expanded over what we have done in many, many years ago. So I believe 1 meeting a month will work. With the knowledge that we can call a second meeting if it's required, and that we are proactive in the months that are busier to schedule those special board meetings ahead of time so that we have those meetings already scheduled. So to me, this makes total sense. So I also have comments about the dates and the days of the week, because I had previously brought the days of the week up to change, so.
Okay, Margot with a final comment on the 1 board meeting a month.
Perfect. Thank you, Joanna. So a couple of things. I I disagree with what you're saying about scheduling a second meeting, because I think that comes down to your ability as agenda setters. So that when you look at setting the agenda, and Curtis, if you're saying there are meetings that we could combine, then when you set the agenda, you decide that and you say, we don't need 2 board meetings this month because we can combine it. We know we can be efficient. That's what agenda setting is for. So again, I think, as Tanya said, it's more difficult to create a meeting rather than cancel a meeting. And I also worry with the idea of calling special meetings that we are truncating the conversation, because we're only going to be allowed to talk about that particular piece. So if something else comes up during the week and we can't talk about it because it's not part of that special meeting. So those are just, again, there's just a teeny piece right back here in the back of my brain that worry that we are going to miss things. So again, I love one board meeting. I love having 2 weeks off. I love having 2 Wednesdays off. But I can't help but think, as Jean said, keep the trial and be mindful that we've only done this for a short period of time in the spring. We don't know what it will look like in other times of the year. So I just worry. Thank you.
Carolina, would you like to respond?
Thank you. I just have a couple of comments on that. If it is the will of the trustees to continue the trial, that's not necessarily a bad idea. There's nothing wrong with that from my perspective. But what I will say in terms of agenda setting is, because there are such frequent meetings formally prior to the trial, in actual fact, when you are building an agenda and the deadline for items for that agenda are the day before the agenda is to be published, you don't really have that ability to say, hey, these items we're going to cancel this meeting and these items are going to go to two weeks later, because the deadline is so far down the process. And really, best practice for agenda setting and for governance is that we are very forward focused. We plan ahead of time. I mean, I've been in different organizations where items are due like 4 weeks before an actual agenda meeting happens. And so when you're operating on those workflow deadlines, then something like that could happen. But in our current circumstance, when items are due essentially the day before the agenda is to be published, there really isn't that ability for that proactive agenda setting and planning to happen. There just isn't the time. So I know that we plan in the report tracker, but motions will often come through that are maybe not on that tracker, that are not on the planner. And so I would say that could be a future state, but we are not currently positioned to do that.
Can I just quickly follow up? I just think, so you're talking about forward thinking. And so I just think if we're doing that forward thinking, so again, I am happy. I think as Jean suggested, we should continue to see if this continues to work as we move forward. Yeah, thank you.
All right. So I hear there's willingness to continue with the pilot, and I believe that will help to answer some of those questions and concerns around whether a second meeting would be required and if we ever find ourselves between a rock and a hard place. Okay. Moving on to the second idea here to be explored, and that is whether the meetings should be continuing on Wednesdays or should they be switched to Tuesdays.
6 p.m. start.
Oh, sorry, 6 p.m. start. I'm going to scroll back to
Private right after public.
yes. Okay. The start of the public session. As in our pilot, we started at 6 p.m. with a private session to follow after the public session. So let's have a bit of discussion about that, or the time. Okay, Donna.
and they all disappear off the list. I just want to go on record as saying I love this. I think it was a very positive change in a lot of aspects. In terms of respecting our student trustees' time, instead of respecting staff time and the public's time, being able to start Inspire Awards on time, everything else that we do. I thought that this was one of the most positive changes I thought that we made, and I would heartily endorse it going forward.
Thank you. And Robbie?
Yes.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you. And Tanya?
So I'm in favor of 6 o'clock, and I thought perhaps maybe you, Joanna, would like to see if anyone is opposed to 6 o'clock, because if everyone's in favor of 6 o'clock, then recommendation 2 is a go.
All right. By show of hands, anybody opposed to starting public session at 6 o'clock? No hands, so it's a unanimous agreement that we will switch to a 6 p.m. Public session start. Okay. So now we're on to a discussion about the day of the week. Shall we continue with Wednesdays, as has been practiced for a long, long time, or switch over to Tuesday nights? And Kelly's first on the list.
Thank you. I actually brought this to the board as a topic to consider for discussion a few months ago, and because I know that Wednesdays are problematic in that many organizations have meetings on Wednesdays or have conferences that start that you have to travel to for. So to me, Tuesday makes much more sense. I have been at board meetings that were Tuesdays, and then actually when I started it was Thursdays, but that was too little time towards the end of the week. Then they got moved to Tuesdays, and then I don't remember why they got changed to Wednesdays. So to change it is nothing special or new, but I would be in full support of changing it till Tuesdays.
We do, no. Okay, so no show of hands for this. We want to continue the discussion. Okay. Carol's next on the line.
Thank you. Through you, I just had a quick question. I didn't see it in the report. Did you consult with SEAC, which meets on Tuesdays? I'm just thinking because SEAC is a 4-year term, and we have community and members at large who would have joined at the beginning of this trustee term with the assumption that the meetings would be on Tuesdays. And I'm just wondering if you had some feedback from them.
That's a great point. No, I did not. I'll be frank, I didn't. I can certainly do that. I will loop in with the corresponding superintendent and then go from there.
Just to follow up, the Human Rights and Equity Advisory Committee also meets on Tuesdays, and that's another one that is very heavily community-based. And I don't know, because I just joined, whether there was a conversation at the beginning that committed to Tuesdays, or if that's just, I wouldn't want to speak to that, but that's another one that appears in my calendar on Tuesday.
It was just decided by the board, but it was just.
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of when they land, not all of those would land on the same week. So if they have a Tuesday meeting, I can't recall which ones they were, but I did notice them on the calendar, and some of those landed on the off week that these were on. I can certainly, however, take that back, and also to, if it is the will of trustees to have your meetings on Tuesday, then I can certainly see if they would be open to the possibility of keeping their meetings on Tuesdays, but maybe not on that week that the trustees are holding their meeting. So there's ways around that, and I'm sure that in them building their schedule for next year, that can be a consideration that they have in their mind.
Thank you for that. Tanya?
Yes, so Donna also mentioned Student Senate, which was what I wanted to bring up. Student Senate also meets on Tuesday night. So between SEAC on Tuesdays and Student Senate on Tuesday, and trustee representation on both those committees, there's a lot of juggling that might need to happen. So Student Senate might be another committee that may need to change their evening if we do opt for Tuesday night meetings.
Yes, thank you for that. And I believe one of those falls on the off week. I think it might be Student Senate. Don't quote me on that. But I'll certainly take that back and have those discussions with them. That's no problem.
All right, Jean.
Hi, not that anything is really ever carved in stone, but I think of our schools and our school council meetings, parent council. Sometimes they fall into a cadence of a routine, and I can't speak for sure for all the 15 schools up in Halton Hills, but I know some typically meet on a Tuesday night. That's just another, layer of people and meetings that we might have to consider.
And Donna.
I just want to say, I think there's a lot of barriers to this in terms of other meetings. But I do think if it is possible to work with SEAC and Student Senate and HREAC and all that, I think Tuesday might be a better day. I'm not opposed to moving to Tuesday because, again, I thought a lot of conferences, like a lot of the OPSPA stuff starts on Thursday morning, which makes it really difficult to be here at Wednesday night. So I guess what I'm saying is I would love to see this explored further to see if the logistics can be feasible.
Okay, and I'll just add,
Thanks. Carolina, would you be, in the report, you haven't really listed much in the way of rationale for why we would switch from Wednesdays to Tuesdays from a staff perspective. And I was wondering if you could detail why it is better to have Tuesdays than Wednesdays, because I know that during our agenda setting, you have mentioned a few times that the workflow would be better from a staff perspective if we met on Tuesdays. And I just wanted trustees to have the benefit of that conversation.
Yes, so there are a couple of points mentioned in the report with respect to avoiding scheduling conflicts, and they've been noted. Some of are with respect to conference and attending other events that may start on a Wednesday or later on in the week. The other piece is, for whatever reason, it works out that you have to reschedule less meetings because of dates of significance that happen to fall over Wednesday. And with respect to staff timing, typically for preparing items and having meetings, my preference is always to have them earlier in the week because you have more time following the meeting to action those items within the week. So if you have other items going from committee to board, you have more of time to finalize those items. And it just seems to work better when you get the business out at the front of the week, and then you have the balance of the week to action and move forward those items.
Thank you for that.
Robbie.
I support this from my personal workflow. With a 96-hour lead time, our current agendas arrive on Friday afternoon, and I cut down my professional job time to be able to dedicate some time to this. But it means that I don't have that. I'm not spending my weekend time. My kids are young still, so it's mostly not there that I actually get to. It is some daytime. And so if I get that agenda on Thursday afternoon and I've got the Friday time, then I'm getting questions into staff earlier, and they're getting to see, they're getting more time to respond to what I'm thinking, and it just lines up better. So, I mean, that can also be solved by saying instead of 96 hours, we're going to add 24 more and just give a little more lead time. But shifting to Tuesday does that because it means we get the agenda on Thursday. And it avoids some of the problems that happen when we've got long weekends and get a little bit more space to respond.
Thank you, and I'll just add my comment. And of course, I appreciate that for Tuesdays, we'll have to work it out with many other committees to make sure that there are no scheduling conflicts. But I don't know about how things are in some of your wards, but in my ward, over the past 9 years, I was unable to attend many school functions because they were always scheduled on a Wednesday. And I thought maybe that was kind of a consistent school practice that many of them had on Wednesdays because of the rentals and whatever they were doing on the other days. So I would be in favor of a Tuesday as well. So pending that there are no issues with other committees that typically schedule their meetings on a Tuesday, can we have a show of hands, any opposed to a Tuesday schedule? Okay. So it looks like if we can resolve that with other scheduling of the other committees, Tuesday would be a good day. Thank you. Okay, now we have a third recommendation, and that's to amend the 2023-24 Board of Trustees Committee of the Whole schedule. And I'll be taking questions.
Sorry, it was still relating to the previous topic.
Of a Tuesday?
No, it was about some of the dates that were suggested.
Roll to that. Okay. So Appendix B, Tuesday meetings.
Yes, but I don't know if you all saw an email from Roxana earlier today because of when the announcements of the funding is going to be announced. She's asked if a committee of the whole could be on, I think, the 15th, and then have the board meeting moved to the. A sec, I have to find it. Please.
Can I, do you mind?
Go ahead, Carolina.
So I think I know the email that you're referring to. So Superintendent Ngoy is proposing that, so as you see in the report, I'm proposing that the May 8th Committee of the Whole be rescheduled to May 15th. What she is proposing that it actually be rescheduled to May 22nd, and that the PD that is currently scheduled for May 22nd actually take place on the 15th. So it would be board on May 1st, and then Committee of the Whole on May 22nd, due to the timing around the release of the GSN. So that's what the proposal was.
That's what I wanted just to get in. Thank you.
Okay, no worries.
Okay. So recommendation 3, amend the 2023-24 Board of Trustees Committee of the Whole schedule. Have we dealt with that sufficiently?
So if I could just add clarity to what's in the report. So if you see under recommendation 3, prior to that request from Superintendent Ngoy, I had put in the report to reschedule the May and June meetings as listed. So for May, the report says to reschedule it to May 15th for May 8th. Based on that, if the board is agreeable to it, we could reschedule it to May 22nd to allow for Committee of the Whole to happen then. And then for June, it would be the June 5th board meeting, June 12th Committee of the Whole, and then June 19th special board meeting to deal with some of the final adoption of items for the year, which would include the budget and other plans that would need to be approved. So that is the recommendation and the proposal in front of you.
Any questions or comments on this schedule? Tanya.
Yes, so I'm A-okay with the proposed changes for May as you discussed with Roxana. I do have a concern with the June dates, and that's because when we sat down last year to plan the June meetings, we purposely did not have a board meeting on June 19th because it conflicts with Eid al-Adha. And so now, so because of that, we scheduled a meeting for June 24th. So fast forward to June of this year, we're now proposing a special board meeting on June 19th, which is Eid al-Adha. So I'm pretty sure that that is a holiday of special significance or religious, whatever significance we call it now. So I'm trying to understand the thought process by booking it on June 19th.
I don't care. Well, is someone able to speak to that particular day of significance?
Yeah.
Okay, Naveed?
So would this not be on our religious and creed calendar indicating that things should not be scheduled on that evening? I don't have the calendar handy, but it should be on that calendar.
So this happened in April as well. So the date is wrong, and it happened this, I think, was Eid this month. Yes, right? I think this has happened before. So the board puts the date in the calendar as a fixed date, but the date changes depending on the moon. I don't want to misspeak. So unlike some of the other days of significance that are fixed and we know, Eid will change, and the board is not updating that.
So, actual Eid is going to be on Saturday. Awesome. Actual Eid is going to be on 17th, and I think we're okay for 19th.
So it sounds like the 19th is okay to host a meeting.
June 19th
June
this
19th?
year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's
thank you.
okay.
And I thought we had that confirmation already too.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Because we purposely didn't.
Are there any other questions or comments around the dates here proposed for the rest of the Committee of the Whole for this year? Okay. So what we have proposed here is May 1st will be a board meeting. May 15th will be PD. May 22nd will be Committee of the Whole. June 5th will be a board meeting. June 12th will be Committee of the Whole. And June 19th will be a board meeting. Is everybody, special board meeting, is everybody all right with that? Okay. Seeing no hands against. All right, so we'll move on to the final recommendation. And now that we have selected Tuesday, provided everything else can fall in line, we can look at the Tuesday schedule in Appendix B. And Carolina, is there anything that you want to say first before we go to any questions or comments? Anything that you want to flag or nope? Okay, it's self-explanatory. Are there any questions or concerns about the dates proposed here? And I see Tanya.
So many questions this evening. So if we do move to Tuesdays, pending consultation, as mentioned earlier, the first board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 3rd, which is which is a PD day. So when would the first meeting be? Would we then move it to September 10th, the following week? if we're going to keep with the Tuesday schedule and not throw off the public.
So can I? So that's certainly within that's your decision entirely. What I would propose is that, given that it's the start of the year, I would like to see the meeting take place on the Wednesday, on September 4th, because it's the first week of school and it may be preferable to do that, but it could work either way, and that's really the will of the trustees.
Amy? Sorry.
My speaker's thing is still going. So if we're in an effort to move everything to a Tuesday, then I would also move September 3rd meeting to September 10th, because that way we keep it consistent and we don't confuse ourselves or the public with our meeting dates.
Is everybody in agreement on that? Okay, Amy.
Yeah, I agree. It should be, I think, staying with the Tuesdays so that we're not confusing the public. It also makes it so that anyone who has children still in our school system will have that first day of school to be able to have dinner with their children instead of being here. And I think that's a kindness to anyone with little ones. So I would agree that having it on the 10th is a better place.
Robbie.
Thank you. As one who has a child whose very first day of school will be that Wednesday, I would appreciate that. My question was actually about the organizational meeting, which in our existing policies falls automatically on a Wednesday. We have the ability to amend that policy. I would suggest that we do so and we seek to schedule the organizational meeting on a Tuesday. Just since it's not in here, I wanted to put that forward on the table.
Okay, Amy?
Sure. I was in looking at this schedule, I think we're supposed to be doing it the first Wednesday following the 15th of the month. If we're doing it on the Tuesday, then it would be the 19th, which means that the committee of the whole would either be the 12th or the 26th. And I would like to suggest that having it on the 26th would be probably better placed, because after committee of the whole, we could then have striking committees. I would love to hear what anyone else's thoughts are on that.
Does anybody want to respond to Amy?
I was going to say no.
Tanya.
Sorry, a point of clarification. Amy, are you suggesting the organization meeting happens on the 26th of November? Or?
I'm suggesting that the organizational meeting, which by the Ed Act has to occur within 7 days of the anniversary, that we should have that on the 19th.
Okay.
And that we should have committee of the whole on the 26th, so that we can have striking committees immediately following committee of the whole. Robbie's on the list.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
Robbie?
Quick clarification, because we were just looking at this. The Ed Act requires that the inaugural meeting be within 7 days of November 15th. Following annual organizational meetings do not have to be within 7 days. They're simply at the next board meeting occurring after the 15th. But if we want to keep that practice within 7 days, we absolutely can for ourselves. It's just not a legislative requirement.
Thank you for those clarifications. Any other questions or comments? Did anybody notice anything on the schedule that raises any concern? So not seeing any concerns. That looks like this is a schedule that we would be happy to adopt. Sorry? Looks like a schedule we can adopt. Is there a need to consider the Wednesday schedule? Nope. Okay, so we will wait to hear if there are any issues with going forward with a Tuesday. And for now, this is the schedule that we'll be accepting, and then we'll hear back from Carolina if there are any concerns. Okay, well, thank you very much for this great and very helpful discussion.
Could I get a point of clarification? When would we be switching to Tuesdays? In September or?
Yeah, the switch would be made as of September, our very first meeting.
I'm excited about it.
Okay, very exciting. Moving on. Our next discussion item is a very exciting project brought to us by the Director, Communications and Facilities. And so I'll let, Ian, start the.
And Heather.
Okay, yeah. Over to you, Ian.
I'm going to introduce
And Heather.
it.
Who's doing the introduction?
Me.
Oh, Carolina's going to do the introduction. Over to you, Carolina.
I'm sorry, Joanna, I didn't make that clear before. I know there's a lot of names there. So you have the report before you. This is just, this is an initiative that has started from some comments received about the need to update the pictures that are in the hallway to the entrance of the boardroom to make sure that we have current pictures up there of the chair and director. And so this, as you can see, grew to be a little bit larger than that. And so there are a couple of recommendations with respect to modernizing and digitizing the way in which we provide those pictures to the public. And then also with respect to making some physical updates to the lobby so that we are presenting that information and those pictures in a more welcoming manner and taking this as an opportunity just to create a more welcoming space. So Ian and Heather can absolutely add anything to the discussion, but maybe perhaps if there's just any questions up front, we'll go from there.
Okay, well, this sounds like a very exciting and wonderful initiative. As a person who is very sentimental and values and respects history and contributions of others, I'm very keen to see this come together and to be able to witness your product. So thank you for taking this on. And now we'll go into questions and comments, and I see Kelly's on the list.
I think this is a wonderful idea, seeing as I haven't been chair for 6 years and I am still not on the wall. And I was chair for 4 years, that I've often wondered why not. So I think it's a great idea. It's a great way to capture our history. I've long thought that the whole, all trustees should have a group picture displayed as well, because all trustees should be acknowledged. I just think this is a great idea, so thank you so much for coming up with it, everyone. I do have a suggestion, which maybe to go further, as part of your history and recognition of everyone, I think we should be also doing something similar with all our schools. Every school should have their picture somehow being rotated through the art of digitization as a display, so that we can acknowledge all schools somehow in the way. And I mean, there's probably pictures of past schools that could be included. So I just think that it's important that we capture our history as a board, because so much of it has been lost. But I really think this is a great first step, so thank you for that.
Okay, over to you, Jean.
Thank you very much. Reading the last paragraph in this report talks about the cost, and the cost being that it would be probably wrapped into a previous facility upgrade that we had here at the building. So I'm very pleased about that, because I'm very, very conscious about taking on new initiatives and spending new monies in the time in which we are in. So glad to see that it could be accommodated by previous monies already dedicated to refurbishing and improving this building. Thank you.
I don't see any other speakers on the list. Carolina, did you want to chime in? Okay.
I'm sorry, and I'll stop talking for the next 3 meetings. But so just there is an ask in the report for trustees to consider. Part of this initiative, the goal is to include a brief description of the different chairs that honors each of the individuals' work with the board. So to complete this work, one of the ideas that we had is that trustees from each of those respective wards could perhaps contribute to doing some of that research and providing some of that information, as you would be distinctly tied to obviously the history and know a lot more of the background. And so if you would be open to that and willing to assist with that, that would be wonderful.
Okay. Oh, Donna.
Sorry, I hope I'm okay jumping into the physical updates part of it. And I absolutely agree with, because I don't think anything in that room has been changed since I started 18 years ago. And probably not since you started 20 odd years ago, Kelly. But I did notice the removal of the bell, and I wondered what would happen to that bell. We're giving it to Ian? Okay, I'm good with that.
That is one of the questions, is there any sensitivity to some of the artifacts that are there? Certainly the planters, we recognize we have to remove by sledgehammer. We wouldn't do that with the bells. There are 2 bells out there. We will hold on to them for a time, but we are uncertain how to pay respect to that and honor the history. So open to ideas, but we do plan to vacate them from that space and move them. And if it's so warranted to dispose, we can do that, but happy to take suggestions as well as to where they came from and what we could do with them.
Okay, Kelly.
Just so you know, I have been around longer than Donna, and this room didn't exist at one point. So there was a pit where the recording secretary sat down there, sort of surrounded. And this has been changed many times. So thank you for the fact of modernization. In my opinion, I'm, again, about the history. I like the bell, and I also like the stained glass, which came from a school. So I'm hoping some of these things don't get lost, because we still need to celebrate them somehow. And I do have one question regarding the web page. I'm assuming it's just a mock-up right now, because it's not in chronological order. So right now they sort of jump all over, and I'm hoping at some point it will be.
Absolutely, it will be. Just providing a quick mock-up, and we were able to scan the photos from the wall, but recognizing that the wall hasn't been updated either. So yes, if trustees like this layout, we will absolutely provide a full and accurate history on this page.
Thank you very much. Okay, Donna.
I just, Kelly tweaked, I didn't see anything in here about the stained glass window. Are there any plans to remove that window? Because I think it's a wonderful feature of this room. And also it was donated.
There are no plans to remove the stained glass. That'll remain.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, I added myself to that list because I also was a bit alarmed when I read about the bell, and I also am very attached to that stained glass, and I hope that the bells and the stained glass remain as the features in this building. And I also have a question about the brown wood slat ceiling. I'm not sure what that refers to. There is a bit of... Is it in that room? Okay, I'll have to take a look, because I know there's some sensitivity around painting wood and never, being able to go back to it. So I'm sure thought had been given to that. Okay, any other questions or comments around this topic area, the project itself or the facilities? Seeing none, thank you very much, Heather and Ian, and Carolina. We will now move on to item 5.0, which is updates from our standing committees. And we'll begin with board self-assessment. And that is, Robbie, before I pass it over to you, I will just give a brief update. You recall that at the March Committee of the Whole, we had a little small group exercise where everybody went around and shared their thoughts and comments about 4 specific themes that dealt with teamwork and collaboration and those aspects. And so I had compiled those comments and drafted kind of a high-level summary report where I tried to pull out key themes that emerged from those from that sharing around each of the 4 themes, and also listed out recommendations or strategies that you had indicated as something that we could put into practice to use during our committee meetings, during board meetings, and in our collaboration. So I shared that with you by email, and that's for your information. You may refer to that and use it going forward. And now I will ask Robbie, the co-chair of Board Self-Assessment, to take us through the next steps for our committee and the work that we have done.
Thank you. So from the Board Self-Assessment's first chunk of work was to take a look at last year's survey and the results thereof and look into kind of prod at where trustees had identified potential weaknesses and things we should be acting on. And so that's been the first part of our discussions. And then we flipped with significant prodding, thank you from Tanya, into discussing what next year's survey should look like and what we should be evaluating ourselves against. And there were a couple of voices that came up with a lot of push to make sure that we were still able to compare year over year. And we went back and took a look at it, and took a look at some of the, OBSPA has a template. There were 5 different templates that came from the National School Boards Association that have a whole bunch of possible questions that could be used in different ways to structure assessments. And we took a look at what we had, and we went, there's a couple of things that we think are actually significantly worth changing. And one of them was the organization piece. And being able to group and talk about, okay, these are the major themes we want to be talking about. These are the questions that speak to those themes. Let's bring those together. And then within the specific questions, there were a few places where we saw things that are like, oh yeah, we should really be looking at that for ourselves. And a couple places we went and said, we're asking a lot of kind of yes/no questions. Do we have X in place? And those are questions we should be checking on a checklist, but they're maybe not the right tool for the self-assessment where we're asking trustees to reflect on how well are we doing this, not simply are we doing this or not. And so that was the premise behind what we drafted. This is very much a draft, and that's why I sent it out as such. We're looking for feedback tonight, and also over the next week. If you want to go into the document and make suggestions and make comments, that's extremely welcome. So floor is open to reflect on the draft survey. This, again, with my apologies, was circulated on Monday.
Thank you, Robbie. And I'll just add that the questions we've created themes that we put the questions under, and that's strategic focus, community relations, board member team, trustee role, board processes, fiduciary responsibility, and areas for improvement, with the possibility to also have some open-ended questions. And some of those we used in our previous survey in 23, and some came from OBSPA. And we thought it was valuable to go with the direction of OPSPA in that that will standardize the survey across all school boards as well. But of course, if OPSPA is doing any more work on this, then that will have to be taken into consideration as well. So I wonder, are there at this point any questions or comments, any high-level thoughts that you want to share to help further this work so that we can arrive at our aim is to arrive at a final version and have it done well in advance of next year. So we'd like to wrap up before the end of the school year. Okay, Amy?
Thank you for all the work that you've done on this. I know that I've looked it over a couple of times, and it looks like something that I might comment on in the coming week. Haven't had a chance to do so yet, but for sure in the coming week I will probably have some comments, all of them good. And yeah, thank you for this work.
And just in case anybody's wondering, I'm not sure, maybe Robbie, you addressed it already. When you're reading this, you see numbers. So the numbers in brackets correspond to the number that question was in our 23 survey. So that if you have that 23 survey, it allows for comparability of where the question came from. It also helps us track what we had and where. And then OPSPA is in brackets, that tells you it came from, that was the source.
And the final 3 pages of that document are the entire 2023 survey cross-referenced with where those questions have gone, whether they're being kept, edited, replaced, or removed entirely.
Okay, Tanya.
Yep, thank you. This is, I haven't had a chance to read it all. I do have a question as I started going through some of the commentary. So when we do a self-assessment, it's me at the end of the year and how I think either me as a trustee or me as a member of a board, how we did along all these different points. There are some questions on here that I guess I find that are very subjective, depending on how you look at it. So I'm thinking back to measuring. So question number 6, community relations. It asks, the board engages and collaborates with its community to generate feedback and information about community/parent needs. So if I look at this, is it how I perceive the board engaging? So I guess I'm having a hard time because I could perceive that the board generates feedback from the community, and I'll put strongly agree. But my strongly agree could just be my perception, but not actually what's happening. So I'm trying to distinguish between what's actually happening versus my perception of what the question is asking me. Does that make sense?
I think so. I'll address what I think I heard, and you can tell me if I got what you're asking. This is a board self-assessment tool, and as such, it is asking for the perspectives of trustees. It is a data point that we can operate from, saying this is how we think the board is doing. It would behoove us to find other data to ask, do our perceptions align with what other data sources, other perspectives, or quantitative data, if it exists, is telling us about whether the board is succeeding in different areas. And that is worth a conversation about which areas of that fall within self-assessment and which areas fall in our standard process of monitoring how the Halton District School Board as a whole is achieving its aims.
And if I could build on that, questions 6 and 7, we actually posed that to our multi-year plan preparation consultant when we did that PD, and we had some feedback from him. And the thinking was that we would engage trustees in a discussion at a future committee of the whole to come to an understanding about what are some of our expectations and what does that look like. What would we have to kind of agree on that we need to do X, Y, Z in order to meet a particular standard or requirement or criteria. So I think we can have more discussions about that, because that will, I believe, then help you to respond, right? Because you'll be able to say to yourself, we agreed that this is required to meet this goal. We are doing it or we're not doing it.
If I could add, yeah, so I think when I look at, if I'm going to do a board self-assessment, I look at SMART goals. Is this specific? Can I measure it? So if I think that, did the board engage? And I know this year's a bit of an exception because it's the multi-year plan. And so there's definitely going to be consultation on that. But then I look at it from other perspectives. Have we done enough consultation on the other work we're supposed to do as mandated by the ED Act? Are we consulting on policy? Are we consulting on whatever it is? So again, I just started looking at this right now. So maybe there could be some helpful examples to help guide whether or not I should score something strongly agree versus neutral. So, for consultation, did we consult on MYP? Yes, no. Did we consult on policy? Yes, no. Did we consult on ABC? Yes, no. So just little things to really be able, I'm looking, I guess, for specific examples that we can measure. And I always go back to SMART goals. Is it specific? Can it be measured? And then therefore, whenever the 11 of us are actually doing the self-assessment, we are all answering questions at par. We're all looking at the same things when we're assessing ourselves as a board.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I was alluding to, right? We need to have those discussions to arrive at an agreement of what this is meant to look like, what our expectations are, and then we can assess whether we are achieving them and reaching those goals. Over to you, Robbie. You had your hand up.
So you're looking for an evaluation rubric, effectively.
Sort of.
The one thing I realized as I didn't flag as another proposed amendment here that is significant is that we provide an open text response option with each of these questions, so that you don't have to answer all of them by any stretch of the imagination. The expectation is that most people do not answer most open text in responses, but that it's available, so that if you want to respond and say, I think we did a great job on the MYP engagement, and I think we did a mediocre job on this, and explain that that's why you are answering that way, that field is there for you to be able to do that.
Okay, I don't see any more speakers on the list, so we invite you to have a close look at this draft survey tool and come back to us with your comments around, what questions you think maybe can come off to make this a little bit simpler, which questions absolutely should stay on, and any feedback maybe around, if there's wording or anything that's not clear, let us know, because the committee will come back to this and work to create a final draft. And Robbie, we should give the group an idea of a timeline or a deadline for this.
That's 1 week from today.
Okay, thank you. Kelly has a question?
Not so much of a question, but a fact I wanted to acknowledge about our HDSB trustee agreement, which came out of the questionnaire last time in our discussions as part of the committee, and that we all agreed upon these points, and we decided that we wanted to have them so we could put them in front of us to remind us of how they would help us fulfill our roles. So everybody got a copy, and I know that I'll leave mine here in front of me, and I think most of you may, or some of you may want to take them home. But anyways, that's what they're for.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, no other speakers on the list, so we will move on to the governance documents review, and that is Robbie.
No, I think Caroline has shared the one significant update that we need to share at this table, so I think I'll pass this time and let us continue.
Okay, thank you. Trustees Professional Development, Carol.
Thank you. Through you, there's not a lot to report other than I think everyone's aware and has RSVP'd for the PD on governance that's coming. Thank you, Carolina. That was a lot of emails back and forth for arranging that with Marion Thompson-Howell. So as we spoke about at last Committee of the Whole, this is Part B of our governance training. We will have the ability to submit questions through Carolina. So in advance, Marion's happy to take some specific questions or topics that we were hoping that she would cover. June, it looks fairly busy, I would say, in terms of both meetings, and we do have some PD scheduled. So the PD committee is meeting tomorrow to discuss the remaining PD topics that we had agreed to at our last board meeting. So we will start to talk about what to offer and when, but I think at this point we're probably looking at September for our next PD realistically, if that's okay with everyone. And we will continue, as we had discussed, with the idea of all facilitators getting questions and issues ahead of time from participants, looking for polling dates as early as possible, and that kind of thing will be our plan moving forward. So more to come, but just so everyone knows, I don't think you'll be looking for any dates in your calendar before September for the next PD. Thanks.
Any questions for this committee? Okay, thank you very much. And now on to fair funding, and Kelly will present.
The Fair Funding Committee has been really hard at work. We've been trying to do all kinds of structure around how to raise awareness for the funding in conjunction. There. It's coming slowly. Oh, okay. Thank you. So earlier today, I sent you this link, and so this is part of the strategy that we've been building. So I first have to acknowledge the members of the committee, which is Robbie and Joanna and Roxana, who's been a huge help, as well as Heather Francie and her whole communication department, because they've been helping us huge on trying to put all these pieces together. So what we now have is, if you click on this link, we have created an infographic that will be able to be shared with parents electronically and hard copy. There's still some minor tweaks happening. This website is not actually live yet. You have the links, but we're still doing some tweaking. We'll give you the information when it goes live so you can start sharing it. But we also have a strategy around that. So if everybody could just at some point have a look and make sure it all makes sense, because it has to us, it has to Roxana, it has to communications. We just want to make sure everybody's eyes that the information that we're trying to share with the community and what can they do to help us advocate for better funding for the board. So the information is all there, and it comes down to this QR code, which is going to lead to the website that we were just on. Can I go back? Or is it? There it is. This website, this web page. So that infographic will, if they have the hard copy and they can scan it, it will go to this web page, which has the same information as what the infographic has. And it will also have more information about how to contact your MPP. We have created 4 different template letters for I guess it's maybe 5. I see 5 there. So that parents can copy and paste and then send them to the MPPs to advocate on our behalf. So those don't have the links to them yet because they're coming. We're just getting some final tweaking. But it's basically a template with you decide who your MPP is. You've already got the information above. Fill it out. Fill out your name at the bottom. And so there's some other choices like I'm a parent, I'm a community member, whatever. And so we're hoping it makes it very simple for parents to be able to email these out on our behalf. We've also put information about the board, the budget development process, and the provincial page on education funding, as well as the Committee of the Whole budget presentation from March 20th. The actual video is there so parents can watch it so they can get an understanding of how the budget, from that budget presentation. We are looking at trying to piggyback on when the actual budget information comes out after Roxana receives the information from the government. And so I do want some feedback. We're looking at potentially having a virtual community meeting to do this announcement to our community. So I guess what we want to know is, do you think that's a good idea? Because we will basically be sharing the information about where we are, what the problem is, and how can they help in this process. We're also looking at, we've drafted a letter for the chair to share out to the community. We've drafted a media release that will be going out from the chair. And we're going to be sending a letter through the chair to OASBO and to OPSPA so that the other groups can also get it. And we also want to make, hopefully through the director and the chair, get a meeting with all of our MPPs to have a discussion. Robbie, Joanna, is there anything else?
I'll just add to this. So the template letters that you see there's 5 of them. Those are issue-specific letters. So if a parent or community member has particular concerns with whether it's special education or student transportation, they would go there and copy and paste the body of that letter and add to it their own comments or thoughts, or they might want to speak to all of these issues. But those templates were created to provide the information and also to make it easier for parents to participate.
There are 4 templates, and these are not exactly lined up as the headings. These are samples that were put up. So special education is one of them. Central staff is not one of the templates.
No, I thought this one is counting. I believe it's transportation, kindergarten, special education. No, can't remember the 4th one right now.
So the ones that are up there are not actually the templates that we have done. They're examples that were pulled together.
So are there any comments or questions? And what do people feel about us having a virtual town hall on this? Because we're also going to ask you to go out to your families and schools and super councils and share the information as well.
So the chair will do a media release. Trustees will have access to all this information to share with their contacts. We will see how else we can share it with the school community. The website will be finalized, so you'll be able to access, and everybody will be able to access that information, put it together. And we're proposing doing a live stream presentation that the Fair Funding Committee will lead with our, with an invitation to the broad HDSB and education partners, members, stakeholders, I'll call them. And so the question is,
and we are proposing if we do it, it would be the last Wednesday in May, because it'd be right after the announcements had come and the information will be shared to the board.
And we are planning meetings with MVPs as well. Yes. And that would be all trustees in attendance.
Invited to be, yes.
Right. And the dates are yet to be established. Okay, so are there any questions or comments around this initiative? Margot.
Thanks, Joanna. So Kelly, it's amazing work you've done. You and Robbie and Joanna, what great work you've done as a committee and a team. It's really wonderful to see. I think the idea of live streaming the event is great. I'm wondering, have we considered trying to get in touch with media outlets to see if they want to be involved too? I think this might be something that you might want to consider. Like, I know CHCH has had some interest in our board before, so you could maybe reach out to see if they want to cover this as well. My one concern, and I don't know if you thought about this at all, but I'm thinking about some of the mass emails that we get. Is there a way to ensure that the emails that the parents are accessing, like you talked about them personalizing the end of it, that it doesn't turn into that flood your inbox? Because like I look at how when that happens to us, if we get these floods of emails, they lose their impact, they lose their effectiveness. I'm just wondering, with those templates that you have you created a way to ensure they authentically come from individual members?
They actually have to send them themselves. They have to copy and paste them into their email. And each template is totally different. We've tried to create 4 different letters. They're not exactly the same, so that when they're reading the first paragraph, if each one is going to be different, right? Because that's when you go, it's the same.
That's my only worry, and I'm sure that you've tried to think about that, but I just think about when there is something from our board, and all of a sudden it goes ping, 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 and delete, 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 or create your own form letter to respond, so you're not actually reading them. So I just really want to hope that we've built something in to make sure they're impactful. But again, I try to reach out to media as well.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Jean?
Yeah, I think I'm next on the speaker list here. On the infographic, I wonder if you could take us up to the first paragraph at the top. Right there. Okay. The last sentence in the first paragraph, a reduction of this scale will involve cuts that affect classrooms. That is, I think parents would want to hear something like that will affect all aspects of the delivery of education, including the classroom. I think that parents are very sensitive to always seeing the kids being the vessel on which the most impact and the most hurt is caused. Example, when we have strikes, it's extracurriculars that are, thrown out the door first as one of the ways in which we have these strikes occur and what have you. It's always the kids that feel the impact. And I think that parents would not want, from a political point of view, would not want to see that it's just about the kids and the impact in the classroom. It's about all aspects of the board, like central and everything. So that's just that I was sensitive to that, and I'll tell you why. At the Halton Hills council meeting that we presented at on Monday, one of the councillors said, when it came to about the cuts in education or the fact that we're really challenged with our budget, the councillor said something to the effect, well, I hope that it's not going to impact any of our classes. And he says, however, I think that if you are having to make cuts, even if it wasn't in the classroom directly, anywhere else in the board would probably impact the classroom eventually. So he was, gracious enough to acknowledge that, but just to say it's just about the classroom, I think that would hurt us in this campaign.
Okay, thank you for that. That's why I said we're still in the draft, so.
Okay, any final recommendations for the committee to consider? All right, so we invite you to please have a look at this, and
if you do have any other feedback, please get it to us. I would say by the end of the week, because we want to finalize the infographic.
And if I could just add, thank you. Kelly's going to be presenting to my super council tomorrow night, so this is going to be a nice kind of run through, drive through, and we'll see what the comments come out of the community. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Final question from Tanya.
Yeah, so the templates, I like the fact that there are going to be multiple templates to choose from. Do the templates have an ask? Because I don't know what they're saying, but is it just, whenever I get a template, I need to know, what are you asking me? What do you want me to do? So if a parent chooses to send one of these templates and it's going to be received by an MPP, is there an ask of the MPP? And if so, what is the ask?
Robbie's looking up a copy of one of our letters because I can't remember. I thought we had at the end of all the letters.
I think we should go back and double check that, because that may have fallen out of a couple of the templates in the last edit we did. So we should take a look at that.
Okay, we'll revisit that. Thank you. So if anyone has any further feedback, please try to get it to us maybe by Friday. That would be wonderful. I know everybody's busy.
Okay, thank you very much for that. All right, and we are done with the committee updates. We will now move on to trustee questions and comments. Okay, I don't see any on the list. So we will be, hang on, I just need to. Okay. All right, we will be going into a private session regarding personal matters. Thank you very much, and we'll take a 5-minute break before we resume. Sorry, we need to do a vote to go into private. Any objections? No? Okay. We're going into private. Thank you. Let's take a 5-minute break.